Welcome to Like a Bomb, a podcast about powerful women from the past and present. Not fragile like a flower.
Fragile like a bomb.
Hello, and welcome to episode 19 of Like a Bomb. I'm Bailey.
I'm Jill, her mom.
Yeah, and our regular, we pick a story and the other doesn't know, and we find out and learn about powerful groups of women or other women-based things, like perimenopause last time.
Yeah, it's great, Joys. All things women. They're things
Yes.
break, bleed, smile. I don't
Hey, hopefully maybe there'll be a lot more information when I go through that.
There is, and it's funny because since I did that, I was at the doctor's office because I have to go once a week for my allergy shots.
Yep.
And they had like this women's medical magazine, and the front of it was everything you need to know about perimenopause and menopause. And I was like, okay. And so then like everything I've seen since then, it's like all this more information. I'm going, well, wasn't that good timing? I would have loved all this information that I can find. Like you could scan the magazine and get an online version or digital. I don't know. On my phone, I could put the copy of it. And so I sent it to one of my friends who, we're at that age.
Yay.
To learn all kinds of things. There will be, I'm sure, more information out there because if nothing else, my generation, they don't shut their mouths. So it'll be out there. We're loud.
Hey, Gen Z, well, I'm millennial in the way, kind of, in the cusp. But yeah, a lot of us are kind of definitely fighting back of like, no, us women are not going to be treated differently and be sexualized. Like, I was talking with a friend at work, reminded of the atrocious, very sexist, sexualizing dress code, and having been dress code many times at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Because I have long arms and long legs. Everything is covered. But I remember how, it was a year after I left from my high school, and there's a bunch of girls, protesting the dress code and like walking out of the school, like en masse.
Well, I understand school dress codes in the way that, I don't need to see certain things.
Yes,
but
also how they're applied.
Yes, and that's the difference is how they're applied, who is picked out of it, because you wore long shorts. Like your shorts weren't shorts.
They weren't down to the knee. They were the typical athletic shorts, but they covered my butt, and everywhere I moved, I stood out because I have red hair.
They were literally the only shorts you could find to buy.
Yes.
Like that was just how
Girls
it was.
my age could only find basketball shorts that are at your knee or the athletic shorts that have an inseam of like 3 to 4 inches at best.
Yes, and you have monkey arms because you're your father's child, and that means that your arms span is actually longer than your height, meaning your arms are going to go down longer than a normal person's.
And I feel like that means fingertip is not appropriate for me.
Yes.
And it's so many different body types where fingertip, some people can't even like get far enough with their arms.
No.
Those fingertip appropriate shorts wouldn't be covering their butt.
No. What about those people who have long butts? I know those people. No matter what shorts they wear on, they butts everywhere. I made one of those, child. Oh my goodness. Her butt. I love her. She's a mess, but I love her.
Well, I got longer inseam shorts today that I think technically still aren't even fingertip length, even though they cover more of my thigh.
Speaking of shorts, I was going to look and see if I had shorts for your sister because we know I don't wear shorts, but I have shorts. So Why do I have the shorts if she can wear the shorts?
Yeah.
I was going to do that. I forgot about that when I got home last
Yeah, if Piper can't wear them, I probably could.
Probably.
Because you and I are the same size.
Yeah, and she was, I don't know, I put on some weight. She was talking about, because for her clinical things, the stuff for school, she has to wear like athletic clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I have like 3 pairs of shorts, so that should be fine. And I was like, well, I probably have some. I know I have some that we all know I don't wear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless I go through some crazy transformation in the next, I don't know, time and I start wearing shorts, which I don't see happening.
No.
But there's that. And and I would like to be the one who apologizes for the fact that this is coming out later and we skipped a week, because I didn't even know we skipped a week.
It's because you weren't feeling well and you deserve to rest. Because I am a good daughter and puts my mom's health before a podcast.
But I didn't even realize we skipped a week. That's where my brain is.
You're under a lot of stress. We all are. There's a reason. Again, I have the shirt I'm currently wearing that says, if you were not mad, you were not paying attention. And we're already mad.
Yeah, but I apologize to the world out there, probably mainly my students, because there's so many of you that listen and then tell me about what I've said. I'm like,
Well, hey, you know, I can promote my zines now.
yeah, you can. Beautiful.
Not necessarily your students, but your friends,
Yeah,
your friends. You must be older to have these. Not that it's inappropriate. It's in your history books, but it'd be weird giving a What is Fascism zine to middle schoolers.
It would probably be weird. However, they don't actually have history books. I mean, they exist and there's some in the building, but we don't use textbooks anymore in school. Well, okay,
Huh?
I don't know what they do in high school. I have no idea. But
I
textbooks are
didn't
not a
use.
thing.
Let's see, the only textbooks I used in high school was my chemistry, calculus. I think that's it.
My
Because the rest
calculus.
was just like they had to rebuild it with Common Core.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way,
Or
Common
like
Core.
the history books you could use, but you didn't take one home.
Yeah, we have classroom sets, I think, in the history rooms, but they don't use them unless it's
I'm
like
pretty sure we
you're being
used them at
conscious.
least in history for the American history. But also, I
But
don't remember. It's been so long, and American history was not my thing, especially American History 1. That one stressed me out because that teacher was like, you don't have to worry about taking notes. And so I did it, and I got a C because I didn't take notes.
yeah, I have a lot of issues with teachers in the world, but that's a whole other thing. And at
Yes.
some point, I am going to do a whole thing on education, but every time I pull everything up to do for education, they change something else big in education. I'm like, I can't do this because they keep changing education. If they'd stop changing education, then I would be able to do a story on education and women's role in education and blah, blah, blah. But they keep changing education.
Yes, you can do
Stop.
specific women in education, like
I looked at that,
secretaries
but
of education.
yeah, I'm just.
But yes.
It's some point. Well, are you ready? Because I think, did we address anything and everything?
Who goes first? I
I go
forget.
first. It's an
You
odd
go
number, so
first?
I go
It's an odd
first.
number, so you go first. You know these things, which is funny because I'm the one that sets it up by the way the titles are and everything.
Well, I didn't realize we skipped a week. Oh my
You had spring break and you were not feeling well.
lord.
And I was also busy. Like, we learned one friend's cat is not doing well.
Oh, poor
Yeah, it was
thing.
very sad. And then also, like, soccer games have winded me.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I also am not supposed to do like major exertion of things. So another doctor's note for not doing exercise and heavy lifting. Yay!
Yay!
Oh, that's okay. Okay. So I would say I was inspired by things in the news this week, but inspired implies a good thing.
You were intrigued?
I don't even know if intrigued, that still gives it more of a positive spin.
Yeah, I don't know.
So there was either I do like a shorter version of this or I did like a 5-part series. So it's shorter, but there will be different things of it that I will do, not like next one, because the next one I'll do a person or something and then I'm
Yeah,
like, blah blah
but
blah.
it'll be sporadic.
Yes, it'll be from here on, like probably like every other. I'll do more stuff on this. So first things first, here's your warning. I will be discussing miscarriage and that A word that people don't like to say out loud.
Abortion.
Abortion. Yes. So First thing, let's make sure we know our definitions and what these things are. So, a
Mhm.
medical miscarriage is when the body spontaneously and unexpectedly expulsion of the fetus or embryo from the body before able to survive outside the womb. When I say outside the body, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the fetus or embryo is in the uterus, it could be in some other weird parts of your
Yeah,
body.
they sometimes travel, which is scary.
They go in places maybe they shouldn't be.
No.
And I kind of talk about that a little bit. So the reason of the miscarriage part of this is starting is because of the 24-year-old Georgian woman who miscarried at 19 weeks and was arrested.
Yes.
Um, I'm not mentioning her name because she's enough in the press. I'm just saying that this is an example of a case. She was arrested after being found unconscious and bleeding. And she was charged with concealing the death of a person and abandonment of a dead body because a child came out of her at 19 weeks of gestation and was dead. The medical examiner actually found that there was no sign of life at birth, there was no grasp for breath after being expelled from the body. Um, the charges were officially dropped yesterday, so Friday. Um, and they said, you know, well, we didn't see any point in moving forward since there was no, sign of life. Okay, but let's go through the fact that 19-week miscarriage, that's traumatic. That's
Mhm.
huge traumatic. And you were arrested and you had to go through all the legal issues of that. And you are now nationwide and probably worldwide at this point, since
Yeah,
we
because I
are,
did see the article. I just did not want to look into it because they would already stress me out with the title.
yeah, but I mean, worldwide, we're being like pinned down and looked at because of how we're handling this right now. So it's probably,
Back
she's
to my
probably,
zine. Your
yes.
shirt. War on
Sh
women.
Yeah. So she's definitely probably world famous, and that sucks. In 2023, an Ohio woman was who miscarried was charged with abuse of a corpse, and the grand jury found no reason to file charges. Well, miscarriages happen later in pregnancy, and it is
And
a
also stillbirths are a thing
yep,
too.
yep. And there is no fault necessarily of the mother who is, you can do all the right things and still,
Mhm.
again, we have mentioned this multiple times. Bailey was twins. Like,
Yes, and like human bodies are very delicate things, and developing another, women lose teeth, women, have heart attacks because of the fetus, and we
yep,
have some of the most invasive pregnancies out of any mammal.
yeah, we talk about a couple of those horrible things that, the parasite does to the mother, the
Yeah, the
host.
body treats it like a parasite.
Also, right now, the Supreme Court is determining whether states can cut off Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. And I don't do a deep dive into Planned Parenthood right now because that'll come later if I decide how I feel about Planned Parenthood. Sometimes they make me a little angry because they do have some history of eugenics and things like that, which I have discussed. But Planned Parenthood is overall a very good thing for our society.
Today, Planned Parenthood is good.
Yes.
Historically, its founding and creation,
Yes, which
shocking.
yes, and that will be one of my offsets that I will do eventually. But yes, they have some sketchy past in history. However, they are very good for the society right now. So if you don't know, is federal and state funding for healthcare programs for people with limited resources and income. So usually lower income families who cannot afford healthcare. And you can tell me Affordable Care Act, blah, 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 blah. It's not affordable for everybody still. So
Nope.
Medicaid is a government funded, federal and state funded, that pays for your medical, and pays for, reproductives and pregnancy and all that stuff. Well, Planned Parenthood, if you didn't know, which why are you here and you didn't know what Planned Parenthood was, is,
People be hiding under
I
rocks.
guess, and this is the only thing you ever know about women. That's concerning. Please come find me and talk to me. Um, well, maybe not if you're. in my school because then that would be like 20 kids
Exactly.
asking me
That's
like a
why
thousand
it's like,
things.
bleh.
Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit sexual and reproductive health care provider made up of many separate nonprofit organizations, and they're the largest U.S. sexual health and educational organizations. So they do a lot. They have their health care is pregnancy, birth control, cancer screenings, STIs, which if you're old, that's the new STD.
Yes,
Um,
it's sexually transmitted infections instead of
Shins,
diseases.
yes, because it covers some of these things you can take some penicillin for, and you're good.
Hmm.
Still be careful. You don't want to have to take the penicillin. Testing and treatments and abortion services. So abortion services are a reason that a lot of groups and organizations have issues with Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
So here's the thing, though. If there's no Medicaid supporting Planned Parenthood as your healthcare provider, okay, you go to Planned Parenthood for all of your pregnancy, cancer testing, and all of that. If that is not being supported by Medicaid, then people are not going to go to Planned Parenthood. But the problem is they're not knowing until after they've gone to Planned Parenthood if Medicaid's going to cover it. So that's why the court case would be helpful for people to know not to go there and they don't have a bill. That
Hmm.
will be helpful if they decide that. However, there are county, city, and state health departments that do those things too. There are medical colleges, like I grew up in Richmond, so there's MCV, which is the Medical College of Virginia. So it is a medical college, which means it's a hospital. It's also a learning school, meaning that people in those lower incomes can get free to reduced health care for things like pregnancy, STDs, and cancer. But all of those organizations are already pushed to the max.
And you
Like,
have to be in the city that has it.
yes. So you're saying, okay, great. Well, we're going to take it away. Planned Parenthood is big. Planned Parenthood is in so many places and does so much. I had to go there when I didn't have insurance. Was before Affordable Care Act. I had to go there for my yearly like checkups and stuff. And then
Mm.
luckily, when I was at state, because in case you didn't know, all colleges and universities require you to have health insurance to be a student enrolled in their school. And
Didn't
if
know that, but I was traditional.
you had it because you were covered by me.
Exactly, because I
So
was
yeah,
traditional student, meaning I'm under 26. I
yeah,
legally have to have health insurance.
yes. So that's a different thing. I wasn't when I went back to state. So when I was at state, I had to pay for you. They offer you health insurance through the college,
Hmm.
and you have to pay for it. It's like a lump sum. It's a lot, but a little.
Yep.
But I was lucky that after I was there, I got to use their facilities, and they're a huge university. So what they were able to do for me was way more than what other places could do. And like I
Hmm.
found out I had cancer while I was in NC State. I found that out through all of their doctors and things like that. And I got lucky, but because how I had to treat it, they were still able to cover it under it was a whole thing. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of people that can't do that. And you're going to take those services, and we're talking like life-saving services, not
Pap
just
smears, annual pap
yes,
smears.
yes. Like those are the things where you find out you have cancer for certain
Yes,
things.
because you can do an at-home breast exam, but that's also you have to know.
Yeah.
Secondly, a pap smear you can't do yourself.
No.
You can't just
And
be like, "That's cancer."
yeah. So
You can't see it.
there's a lot that we would be losing as a society if we said Medicaid could not help people who need to go there. They were already over the city, the counties, and the state health departments, and even the medical colleges. They're already overrun. Like
Hmm.
they are at max. So that's my rant for Planned Parenthood. In that case, that it's federal and state funding
Hmm.
that Medicaid it gets. So South Carolina is the reason this is in the court system right now for the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court justices are actually conflicted about what to do. I don't know that there should be a conflict or an issue when it's talking about just healthcare. And so that's when we get into some other things. Throw that paper
Yes,
down.
but we have a rather conservative Supreme Court,
We
national
do.
Supreme Court, that also make money and get bribed, and that is still somehow legal.
Well, there's the whole lobby
Yes.
fields, yes. So there's a lot of healthcare services that are gone through Planned Parenthood. And like I said, we discussed cancer, um, not just womenly cancer. Like, there's other cancers. If you have cancer in one place, it also could be in other places. Like, there's lots of
Yes.
cancer places you can
There's
have.
lots of cancer places.
Um, also, like STIs, which I still can't get used to saying. Um, that's just weird to me.
Yeah.
Pregnancy is expensive. Like, I don't know if people really realize the amount that if you don't have any kind of insurance that you would have to pay. Holy cow. I remember finding
I
that out.
know it's like several thousands of dollars.
Oh, it's tens of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
now.
I've
Um,
heard it's like
it
30.
depends on what you need. And
Yeah.
like when I had y'all, things weren't as fancy as they are now, but they were way fancier than
No.
when I was, Anyhow, also I just lost where did it go? It went, nope.
I don't know, but adding to your train of thought, one of the things is that I believe the statistics is average 1 in 2 people have HPV.
Oh, at least.
Yeah,
And
so like that's something, Planned Parenthood just going and getting tested for that if you weren't in the age group or you phased out of the age group of the initial HPV shots. So,
yeah, and that causes lots of other issues if you didn't
yes,
know.
and that can lead to cancer.
It can lead to cancer. Just in case you didn't know that.
But that's also a very treatable one.
Yes, it is. And then there are oh, there you go. Found it. Um, in case you didn't know as well, if you have insurance, okay, you have medical insurance because you went through the Affordable Care Act and you went online and you signed up, or you have it through your employer or your parents or whoever. However, you have your insurance, just so you know, if you haven't added maternity coverage to your insurance plan, they will not cover you if you get pregnant without it on there. Just so you know. Because it would be considered
Wait.
because if you get pregnant without it on your insurance, it is now considered a pre-existing and they do not have to cover you. Yep. So go add it on if you are a woman who might possibly get pregnant, just in case. Because I didn't drop it. I kept it on my insurance until after I had the cancer stuff. Which now I just have cancer stuff on my insurance. But yeah, you have to have it on your insurance beforehand.
I'm so glad I don't plan on having kids.
Yeah. Which most people can't change that but once a year during the open enrollment.
Yep. And
So,
not to mention, the US and many other countries are like, please go have babies. And yet you're charging us extra to have the babies and other
yes.
problems. That's a whole other story.
Yes, you have to have maternity. So, if you are planning to or possibly might get pregnant on your insurance, go talk to your insurance provider of when it is that you can add that to your insurance. It's probably only during open enrollment. So, you probably have a while to wait. But there's all of those many different healthcare things that are covered through Planned Parenthood. And I'm going to focus on a little bit of one today, and that will be abortion because it's heavily in the news so much lately. And in case you didn't know what an abortion was, it is through intervention that terminates pregnancy by expelling the fetus or embryo from the body. Meaning, you didn't naturally do it. Your body didn't just say, whoops, we can't do this and expel. There was some outside force that made it happen. So that's an abortion. And that outside force could be you took a pill, a coat hanger, many other different things.
Yes. The
Yes.
coat hanger,
Is a forever
bad.
symbol. Yeah, it's a forever
I
symbol at
know.
this point, though.
Because
So,
women used to do that and probably still do.
oh, they still do, I'm sure. So the history of the abortion, the first written reference is from an Egyptian embers papyrus, and it was a medical text, and it was in 1550 BCE, and that's about 3,500 years ago. 3,500 years ago. And it described how to induce an abortion. I don't want to talk about what they said to do because then I feel like that's promoting to do that. Like, I don't want to give you recipes. So
Yeah.
there was
You
herbs involved, basically.
can go look it up yourself if
Yeah,
you
you
need
can use
to.
Google or any other search site.
Incognito tab if you're really worried.
Yes. But there are, it does tell you like stuff that they did for that, but I'm again not going to get into that. So, found in ancient Greek and Rome, medical and other texts, including Greek plays, it was addressed. Um, um, Medieval biographies of saints for medical and midwives manuals, and Victorian newsprint and pamphlets. So, historians have found references that medieval saints were celebrated for the miraculous ending of pregnancy. So, there's 4 Irish saints that were celebrated for their ability to induce an abortion.
Hmm.
Um, Also, in the medieval times, of course, if you had an abortion or you helped induce one, you could also be accused of witchcraft. It was a tricky time back then. Let's think about the medieval times. It was just dark. That's why it's
It's
called the
just
Dark
anything's a
Ages.
witch because we don't like women.
Yeah. So, thought to be controversy. It was thought to be controversial in the ancient times, mainly because it was the question of, was the woman not faithful? Is that why she doesn't want to have the baby? Is what was the woman doing? Like her morality came into question, not more than anything of how did she get pregnant? Why is she trying to get rid of the baby? It really didn't have anything to do with the actual fetus back then, the fetus being alive or human or any of those things. It was, what did the woman do for why she doesn't want to have the baby? So that was
Victim
more,
blaming.
yes, for very much the controversy at the time. Um, so and I've discussed this like in our very first episode. The U.S. in 1873, the Comstock Act. That's when it became like you couldn't even talk about it. You couldn't send a pamphlet through mail and talk about
Mhm.
abortion. Like in England in 1861, the Offenses Against the Person Act. I would love to read that whole thing because that just sounds funny. Um, Criminalized abortion unless to save the mother's life. In the Middle Ages, Catholics, of course, said, no to abortion, but they actually did have 2 stipulations. And they're talking Middle Ages, dark times, man.
Okay.
And the Catholics
Especially
were
with
like,
Catholics.
yep, like this is the Catholics. They said if it's rape or if it's to save the mother's lives, they were for it. Catholics aren't for
Okay.
a lot of things. I mean, they're all for, Catholic guilt and
And
things.
no birth control.
Yes, and repopulating the world, but they're not really usually for much else. In 1920, abortion was legalized in the Soviet Union. Granted, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, so I'm not really sure what that
No, but
means.
that's pretty impressive because
That's
that was
impressive.
before here,
Yeah, that was,
and
yeah.
now it's not here anymore.
Yeah. Then we have the 1973 Roe v. Wade. That was just, again, nationwide legalization of the first trimester abortion. If you don't know what the first trimester is, you're pregnant for about 40 weeks. So it's about the first 12 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. It's considered okay, I guess is the right word. The baby cannot survive outside the womb at that point.
Yeah.
It is completely dependent on the host, which is the mother, because it is a parasite.
Yes.
So
It is.
today, so if you didn't know this, there's a lot of websites out there where you can actually look up a ton of information about this. So today, um, Ireland, Nepal, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, and other countries and territories have eased and liberated their abortion restrictions. So 60% of the world has like said this is healthcare. Um, Poland, the US, El Salvador, and Nicaragua have increased their restrictions and access to abortion. Um, So if you actually went to the Center for Reproductive Rights website, it's got really cool interactive maps. It has world maps and it has country maps. So like you can go look at each country in the world and see what theirs are. And then you can also look at every state in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually breaks up the states in our country in 5 different categories, like more liberal and, oh no, they will kill you if you.
Hard red or black,
Yes.
actually. I've seen it in the maps versus the don't go here. There is complete ban.
Yes. So there is places you can look for that. It updates in real time. You can just click on the state, view the state data, and it gives you a summary. Or you can click on the read more, and it gives you more in depth, and it's very legal jargon. So the summary is more understandable as far as like a layperson, and that's most of us who don't have legal expertise.
Yes.
Um, and then there's a place called the Kaiser Family Foundation, which is KFF, and it's nonpartisan, nonprofit info analysis research for all things healthcare. Like it's not just abortions or any of that, it's for all things healthcare. But it does give you a lot of information as well. I know that we both live in the South, and there is a lot more restrictions in where we live.
Yep.
But I can look up what it is so you know what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important. And if you are going, well, I don't understand why abortion is healthcare. Women have been carrying babies for thousands upon thousands of years. Let me also again remind you that Bailey was twins, and that's just one of my miscarriages. Um,
Yeah, my twin
so
went bye.
yeah, so that's just one of my miscarriages. So abortion is a lot of these different reasons. So here's just a couple of reasons. So if you have a pulmonary hypertension, which can cause heart failure with 50% chance of death, that is when you're pregnant. Like, because it is a parasite, people. I love both of my children so very much. I got to spend the day with one of them yesterday, and I'm spending part of my day with my other one today.
Yeah, it's not a hyperbole at all. It literally is a parasite
It's
in
a
all definition
parasite.
of
Yes.
they suck purely nutrients from you, are embedded into you.
Yes. So these things inside of you are little alien parasites, okay? They're causing all kinds of havoc to your life. And if you already had pre existing conditions, that's going to heighten. And even if you didn't, there's so many things that come up just during pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancies, so that is when the implantation outside the uterus, which cannot produce a live birth. If it is not implanted in the uterus, it cannot live outside the womb. And that is typically happens in the fallopian tubes. But
Yes.
if this isn't taken out, it can create life-threatening internal bleeding and infection. Like it's
Yes,
bursting
things can
open.
burst.
Yeah,
Which
like
is so funny. Obviously it's not funny, but like to me, I was talking to a coworker, the one that had rudely grabbed my arm with tattoos, the much older man, and
mm-hmm.
talking about how his daughter had the ectopic pregnancy, and he's like, "I'm so glad we went and we helped take care of it." I'm like, "That was an abortion.
That's an
She had
abortion.
an abortion and it saved her life. You do
Yep.
realize that, yes?" And he just
Yeah.
went,
I mean, it is.
"No, there's not
Yes.
an abortion."
No, that's an abortion when the child is expelled or the fetus or embryo, depending on what stage, because embryo is only a short stage of the
Yes,
gestation.
most of it is fetus.
Yes, is expelled from the body, and however that happens, whether it is them cutting you open and taking it out, it's still expelled from the body. That is an abortion. Literally the definition, and that's why I defined it.
Yes.
You can have severe preeclampsia, that's preeclampsia is more common than people realize. It's an increase in blood pressure, and it can damage the organs and cause seizures, and it can cause strokes. Okay, if the host is dead, the child will not live.
Mm-hmm.
Severe kidney disease leading to extra strain on the kidneys and kidney failure. This lovely child right here, my firstborn, love her so much. She put me into kidney failure when I was pregnant with her.
Oh, I didn't
Like,
know that.
yeah. That was a crazy pregnancy. I
Yeah.
went into labor so many times, and then when it was time for you to come out, you didn't want to come out. It was
And
so
then I
many
had the
things.
cord around my neck once.
Twice. You were twice. Your sister was 3 times.
I thought it was just once. Okay,
No, no.
hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So and here's the thing about that. Not only is it straining your organs and can cause organ failure, um, when I was going into kidney failure, because when you have kidney infections and bladder infections, you cramp. My body cramping sent me into labor because it gave me contractions and I started premature labor. And it was like 20 some weeks.
It's a
So it was,
miracle I'm alive.
yes, there's a lot of reasons that you're a miracle you're here. So it, my body was trying to expel the child on its own because it didn't understand why it was cramping. It was like, oh, it's time. Let's go. Let's go. And it was like, no, no, you can't come out yet. And so I had to go get a bunch of medicine, be on bed rest, and do all this other stuff because you were trying to come out. And luckily, I grew up in it. Like, if that had been 20 years before, they may have not been able to do all those things, and you would have been miscarried.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that. Like, there's medical reasons, guys. Cancer. Of course, if you're getting radiation therapy, you cannot do that when you're pregnant. You
No.
can't. So we get one of two choices. You don't do the radiation therapy and hope that your body can stave off the cancer until after you give birth, which I know people that have done that and then they died not long after. With a child living after them. Or you have an abortion and you continue the treatments. Like, you get one of two options. You don't get to do both. Like, it's just
It's not safe for a fetus to be irradiated and other chemo and things.
it's not safe for anybody to be radiated, but yes,
No, but
exactly.
especially something that is developing.
Exactly. There's so many other things like placenta eruption, which
Eh.
your placenta issues with your sister is a whole thing too. But there's a lot. I mean, and that's just a few. Like, I literally just jotted down the first few that I came across most of these I actually knew. Some because I had to live through them. But anyhow, there's a lot of medical reasons why an abortion is medically necessary to save lives.
Mm-hmm.
It, period.
It is healthcare.
Yes, it is healthcare, and I completely understand if you're religious, you're ethical, you're whatever your belief system is that you cannot see past the fact that as an embryo and further on, it is a living being. Get that. That's fine. But you don't get to dictate what I believe. And I haven't at any point said what I believe. I'm just saying that this is healthcare and these are the reasons why it's considered healthcare. What I want to do with my body and what you want to do with your body are your two things, and that's called civil rights.
Autonomy.
And it actually says in there, in all of our civil rights, it says that these are your rights unless you are now stepping on other people's rights. Period. I have the right to free speech until I'm calling somebody something hateful, and that's now hate speech and it is not protected. You have those rights until you step on somebody else's. If I
Mm-hmm.
believe one thing, you can't dictate what I want to believe. So, worldwide, about 50,000 annual deaths from unsafe and illegal abortions. And of course, they happen more in lower income countries. I mean, that's logical. They have less advanced healthcare and less wide reaching healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
About 300,000 women die from pregnancy and childbirth complications annually. Again, majority are in lower income countries. So, 50,000 die a year from unsafe and illegal abortions. If we have legal and medically safe abortions, that wipes out that. That does not mean that there aren't abortions that happen that are safe and done medically correctly and something isn't complicated. Like, It's just life.
A
Medical,
procedure is a procedure. There's risk
yes.
no matter what.
Yes, there's risk no matter what. I've had a surgery each year for the last couple of years and possibly another one coming up, which, nope,
We don't
nope,
talk about that one. That one's a scary surgery, possibly.
no. So it's scary. Like, it's one of those things. You make sure all your ducks are in a row or your squirrels are in a tree. I don't know what you have, but you make sure that those conversations have been had. Hey, when I go, who's taking my cats? Like, don't break them up. Who's going to take all of my Smurf glasses? Who's going to make sure that my stuffed animals are cared for? These important questions need to be answered. So, but you need to make sure that you're thinking of that and the fact that we need to save lives and not do something because we personally one out of trillions. Anyhow, is that all my papers? I think that might be all my papers. Yeah, that's all my papers.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I'm probably going to go more into depth on a couple of those later. I think Planned Parenthood needs to be covered, and I did mention some of their sketchiness in their history, I think, in my first episode.
Mm-hmm.
But just remember, you have the right to choose your belief system, and everybody else in this world does too. The problem is when it encroaches on your pursuit of happiness, which technically was considered property, but you know what I mean.
Your basic ability to live.
Yep.
Yeah, no, pregnancy is terrifying. And the more you tell me about it, the more I'm happy with my decision.
Between you and your sister and everything else in between, whew.
Yeah. Not to mention, there's also me as a twin, negative side effects as a woman, with the assumption that my twin was my brother.
Yeah, in case we haven't mentioned that.
Sharing a womb with a fraternal twin of the opposite sex is always damaging to the female sex.
Yeah, I had dreams about two cribs before I miscarried and didn't know I was pregnant with twins until I miscarried.
Yeah.
And there was a pink and a blue one, so I assumed that it was a boy and a girl. And yeah, so I
I
don't
mean, it's
know.
possible.
It's
I mean,
possible.
50-50 of
Exactly.
sex.
And it was too early on to find that out. So
I don't know.
don't know.
I'm gonna just stick with the fact that I had a brother.
Yeah, well, he
Because based
hasn't.
off how I am, very likely.
They have a name, so it's
Yeah. But, anyways, my topic is not much lighter. It doesn't have a trigger warning. I'm talking about the Radium Girls.
and that is lighter. Other than the crappy things that happened to him, but hey,
They have radiation poisoning.
but there's glowing lips, so that's at least funny.
Sure. It was terrifying thinking about what happened to these women.
Oh, it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, they got glowing lips, but then their lips, running out.
But so the Radium Girls were female factory workers who contracted radiation poisoning from painting radium dials, which were watch dials in hands with self-luminous paint. The incidents occurred at 3 factories in the U.S., one in Orange, New Jersey, beginning around 1917, one in Ottawa, Illinois, beginning in the early 1920s, and one in Waterbury, Connecticut, also in the 1920s. After being told that the paint was harmless, the women in each facility ingested deadly amounts of radium after being instructed to point their brushes on their lips in order to give them a fine tip. The women were instructed to point their brushes in this way because using rags or water rinse caused them to use more time and material, as the paint was made from powdered radium zinc sulfide, a phosphor, gum, Arabic, and water. The Radium Girls had lasting effects on labor laws here in the US and Europe, following numerous lawsuits following deaths and illness from ingestion of radium. So that's the big overview that Wikipedia has, because honestly, Wikipedia is honestly the easiest thing for a lot of these. So, the radiation exposure. The United States Radium Corporation, USRC, hired approximately 70 women to perform various tasks, including handling radium, while the owners and scientists familiar with the effects of radium carefully avoided any exposure to it themselves. Chemists at the plant used lead screens, tongs, and masks. USRC had distributed literature to the medical community describing the injurious effects of radium. Despite this knowledge, a number of similar deaths had occurred in 1925, including their chief chemist and several female workers. The similar circumstances of their deaths promoted investigations by Dr. Harrison Martland, county physicians of Newark. An estimated 4,000 workers were hired by corporations in the US and Canada to paint watch faces with radium. At USRC, each of the painters mixed their own paint in a small crucible and then used camel hair brushes to apply the glowing paint onto dials. The rate of pay was about a penny and a half per dial, equivalent to $0.368 in 2024, earning the girls about $3.75, equivalent to $92.04 in 2024, for painting 250 dials per shift. So they get $94-ish a day, roughly today, for painting 250 dials.
Well,
The brushes
90,
would lose.
that was
Yes,
a day?
a day, because it
So,
says per shift, so I would assume day.
yeah. So 94 times 5 that's a decent amount of money even today.
Yeah. But also, you're dealing
No,
with
I mean, not for the fact that
$250 dials of
not that
radiation.
you're,
But so the brushes would lose shape after a few strokes, so the USRC supervisors encouraged their workers to point the brushes with their lips. Lip dip paint was their little motto, or use their tongues to keep them sharp. Because the true nature of the radium had been kept from them, the Radium Girls also painted their nails, teeth, and faces for fun with the deadly paint produced at the factory. By 1927, more than 50 of the female factory workers had died from radiation poisoning caused by the paint used. Several are buried in Orange's Rosedale Cemetery. And so the radiation poisoning, dentists were among the first to see numerous problems among dial painters. Dental pain, loose teeth, lesions, and ulcers, and the failure of tooth extractions to heal were some of those conditions. Many of the women developed anemia, bone fractures, and necrosis of the jaw, a condition now known as radium jaw. The women also experienced suppression of menstruation and sterility. Although there were claims that the above conditions were caused by x-rays the women received to investigate their health problems, the amount of radiation absorbed would be inconsequential compared to the amount they were exposed to daily at the radium dial factories. As the factory workers' health deteriorated, they sought medical attention for problems ranging from dental problems to cancer. Columbia University specialist Frederick Flynn was an industrial toxicologist and contracted with the U.S. Radium Corporation, and many other doctors referred to the patients lacked medical training and license to practice. So already these are problematic, and then you give them doctors that aren't medically
ready.
licensed or properly trained. And it turned out at least one of the examinations was a ruse, part of a campaign of disinformation started by the defense contractor. USRC and other watch dial companies rejected claims that the affected workers were suffering from exposure to radium. For some time, doctors, dentists, and researchers complied with requests from the companies not to release their data. Doctors were encouraged to claim that the affected girls had died of syphilis in an attempt to discredit them. The company also claimed they had hired a great many people who were physically unfit to procure employment in other lines of industry as an act of kindness. In 1923, the first dial painter died, and before her death, her jaw fell away from her skull. So she very much had that radium jaw, as they jokingly called it now. The necrosis of the jaw, where the bone and everything is dead and dying. By 1924, 50 women who had worked at the plant were ill and a dozen had died. At the urging of the companies, medical professionals attributed worker deaths to other causes. Syphilis, a notorious STI at the time, was often cited in attempts to smear the reputations of the women. The inventor of the radium dial paint, Dr. Sabin Arnold von Sokoki, died in November 1928, becoming the 16th known victim of the poisoning by radium dial paint. He had gotten sick from radium in his hands, not the jaw, but the circumstances of his death helped the Radium Girls in court. So let's see. You can go into some of the facts of some of the companies, but so the historical impact of the Radium Girls holds an important place in the history of the fields of health physics, women's rights, and labor rights movements. The right of individual workers to sue for damages from corporations due to labor abuse was established. Labor safety standards like the baseline, called provable suffering, were created. Industrial standards for safety improved as a result. And in 1949, Congress passed a bill that decreed compensation for all workers suffering from occupational diseases. The Radium Girls' case was settled in the autumn of 1928, before the trial was deliberated by the jury, and the settlement for each of the Radium Girls was $10,000, equivalent to $183,000 in 2024, and a $600 per year annuity,
Annuity.
equivalent to $11,000 in 2024, paid $12 per week, equivalent to $200 now, for all of their lives, and all medical and legal expenses incurred would also be paid by the company. So if you were a recent employee, I guess you get minimal radiation and a lot of money.
Yeah, but everybody else would be dead, so that
You're suffering
annually
still.
subbering that annual money they're supposed to be paying out and weekly and daily and all that other stuff, they're not paying
Yeah.
out because you're dead now.
Yep.
You.
The lawsuit and resulting publicity was a factor in the establishment of the occupational disease labor law. Radium dial painters were instructed in proper safety precautions and provided with protective gear. In particular, they no longer shaped paintbrushes by lip and avoiding ingesting or breathing the paint. Radium paint was still used in dials as late as the 1970s. The last factory manufacturing radium paint shut down in 1978. So some of the scientific impact of this was Robley D. Evans made the first measurements of exhaled radon and radium excretion from a former dial painter in 1933. At MIT, he gathered dependable body content measurements from 27 dial painters. This information was used in 1941 by the National Bureau of Standards to establish a tolerance level for radium at 0.10. What is that unit? I don't know what the CI is, but I know
Cubic
it's very small. It's
inches?
mu. It's like
Oh,
micro or
that one.
pico.
The one that looks like the weird U that goes like that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
mu.
is mu. I don't know. Remember what that
I don't
is.
remember what it is. But really small because that unit's really, really small. I know that. Um, and so yeah, it's mu big C, capital C, little I, if you know that unit. And so the Center for Human Radiobiology was established at Argonne National Laboratory in 1968. The primary purpose of the center was providing medical examinations for living dial painters. The project also focused on the collection of information and, in some cases, tissue samples from the radium dial painters. When the project ended in 1993, detailed information of 2,403 cases had been collected. This led to a book on the effects of radium on humans. The book suggests that radium 228 exposure is more harmful to health than exposure to radium 226, which, if chemistry, that just means it does a different set of protons in its nucleus and things. And yeah, that we'll go into chemistry later, but it's still radium, different, slightly different makeup. Um, Radium 228 is more likely to cause cancer of the bone, as the shorter half-life of radon 220 compared to radon 222 causes the daughter nucleides of radium 228 to deliver a greater dose of alpha radiation to the bones. So more chemistry. You have different types of radiation. Gosh, the worst is gamma. I think beta I'm assuming would be the one that just bounces off your skin, but it also says alpha. I don't know. There's different levels, and radiation is still radiation, so you know that much. Um, it also considers the induction of several forms of cancer caused by internal exposure to radium and its daughter nucleotides, because things break down, and if it's radioactive, radium, and like uranium, as you're probably familiar with. It has a half life. It's not stable. It will break down, thus, its daughter nucleotides also not necessarily stable. They can be, but not always. Um, the book used data from radium dial painters, people who were exposed as a result of the use of radium containing medical products, and other groups of people who had been exposed to radium. So that is the big overarching of the Radium Girls, but you know, these dial plants use predominantly women workers, encourage them to point their paintbrushes with their lips or their tongues to get a nice clean for their product, knowing full well that it was dangerous, as the scientists were using lead because lead blocks the radiation, so that they don't get sick, but they'll give radiation poisoning to their employees because they mostly care about profit. And that is the Radium Girls in a nutshell.
The crazy part was is the girls they would sprinkle it all over their whole body before they leave work. They'd be like putting it on their lips and their nails so that they can glow when they go out dancing. Like
Yeah.
they and everybody knew that they were doing this. Like this was they were because they made so much more money than everybody else really at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They had more money to go do more things, so they were out in the public and they were
Yes,
considered.
they painted their lips, their teeth, their fingernails,
Yep.
because it's cool, it glows in the same way that, and if you're going to a black light, you want to wear white because it glows.
Yeah, which I think is why I'm very fascinated by anything that glows in the dark and also terrified.
Probably. Um, but yeah, you can thank my partner for the reminder of the Radium Girls' suggestion. Uh,
Oh,
they are a very important historical and scientific group of women, despite the terrible things that occurred to them, as they're
yeah.
slowly dying of radiation poisoning.
Yeah. From mainly the inside out.
Yes,
Yeah.
but as unfortunate as it is, unlike other things in the US, such as gun change and rules, which that's a whole other topic, terrible things happen, change occurs. The worst part
Yes.
is the fact that we have to have the terrible things occur before we actually enact change. But we have a lot of labor laws and safety with radiation and getting injured and stuff, like sick from work protection, thanks to them.
Well, they did a lot of overhaul of fire safety and factory fire safety from shirtwaist. So,
Yep.
I mean,
It causes a tragedy to enact change, but that's not always the case because look at our gun rights and laws.
yes, there's a
That's the
lot of
most prominent that does not prove that point here in the US.
yeah, there's a lot of things that definitely the bad had to spearhead the good, but some things just don't change no matter what you do.
Nope. It has to
But
have death, it has to have serious consequences to enact change.
and even when there's death, sometimes things still don't change, but that's okay.
Nope. But needless to say, that's the Radium Girls. We have a dark episode. But I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about women.
Yeah.
Some things are pretty depressing because it's history and you gotta learn from it.
Yes, that's
Little
so we don't
snippet. Where is it? What panel is it?
so we don't repeat it.
History is repeating. It's not gonna focus.
We did a little.
But
Did a little.
yeah.
Well, have fun out there. Is it supposed to be super hot there today?
Yes.
Yeah, it
And when
was
you go
like
protest, you're supposed to cover your tattoos and things. And I'm like, I will
I didn't
die.
know that was a thing. I don't
Because you don't want
go
to be
here.
identifiable.
I mean, that's what I figured.
I'm
But
identifiable in every aspect. I have red hair and I'm now covered in tattoos.
I
Covered. I have a
remember
lot more.
when I think it was 18 or 19, um, I was looking into being a U.S. Marshal when I was 21,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't have any identifying marks. And I'm like, I think I only had one tattoo at that time, but
Mm-hmm.
um, my birthmark is on my face. Like, I was like, They're like, you'd have to burn it off. I was like, but isn't the scar from that just as identifiable as the birthmark? So I was very confused
Yeah.
by that. I guess a scar of flesh color versus a pink color from my birthmark is two different things. But I always thought that was weird. I'm like, anything you do to cover up the identifiable bodily
It's
mark,
also noticeable.
it's also going to be
No,
identifiable.
over time, maybe not. Like, obviously, in your case, it would, but like, we had the big pink mole that was on my neck that we cut off when I was 10 because it was fidgeting with it.
Yeah.
And throughout high school, I had one person ask if it was a pimple. But yeah, you can't even tell it's there anymore. It's completely blended into my skin now, finally.
Well, you're lucky because your sister started to grow back. The big one that we had to taken off of
Yeah,
her.
I got very lucky. I think a lot of it stems maybe from the location it was at. It wasn't getting irritated as much.
Yeah, but that I know that was one of the things that they said after we got your sisters removed. They're like, well, sometimes they grow back, and I'm like, then why are we here?
Yeah.
And hers grew
Human
back.
body does weird things.
Yeah, hers grew back. So have fun out there. Be safe out there. I'm gonna go check on my boys who weirdly have not bothered me at
I'm gonna
all.
fold a bunch more zines.
I have to fold some clothes too, though.
Yay.
And
A laundry is a tomorrow thing.
uh, I have so many things to do between now and Monday morning. But with that, go do something extraordinary.